Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Prince's Trust Diversity and Inclusion Talks. This panel discussion is here today to talk about championing youth mental health in the workplace. In the next hour, you will hear from our truly inspiring panelists on how we can create a better workplace for the next generation. My name is Dagmar Bennett. Some of you may have met me before on these talks, and I work in the innovation team in the Prince's Trust. Just over a year ago, I decided to change my career. I had a music studio business, which turned into flats. And at the time when I'd finished the studio, I was really struggling to get into work. Despite having a first-class honours in my degree and starting a business and having lots of freelance experience, I found it really difficult to get a job, a normal 9-to-5 job. So I found myself as an unemployed young person. I went to the Prince's Trust and I did an enterprise business course, and then I attended an event called Get Hired. And for me at the time, this event was truly like it completely eradicated all of the barriers that I was facing. I attended one event, and in that afternoon, I had had 4 job interviews and I walked away with 2 successful job offers. And to this day, my manager has still yet to have seen my CV. And now I've been overemployed for over a year. So this is my first ever office job, and I'm now leading on the first Prince's Trust Diversity and Inclusion Talks. So young people, if you're out there, I completely know what you're going through, and I know exactly what it's like to be unemployed. So please do reach out to the team at the Prince's Trust. We are super supportive, non-judgmental, and we're here for you at these current times. So I wanted to start these live talks to make a real change to young people's lives. I believe that if we can create more economic justice for the next generation, then we can create a more inclusive workforce. So yes, we need to educate ourselves, and yes, we need to have open conversations. But most of all, we all need to take some measurable key actions. So all of the audience that are on the call today, I really urge you to take some pen and paper and write down some really key nuggets of knowledge that you're going to hear today in the next hour. So I want you to bring those points in the next meeting. So whether you go to work, I want you to talk about what you've learned today. So please support me on my journey, because your opportunities really do change young lives. The Prince's Trust is the largest youth charity in the UK. We help 11 to 30-year-olds get into employment. The Prince's Trust vision is that every young person should have the chance to succeed, to start something with confidence, courses and career. To celebrate the Manchester Centre reopening, we want to thank the Future Workforce Fund. It's a groundbreaking 2-year initiative that tests innovative ways of delivering support for young people in Greater Manchester. Future Workforce Fund aims to transform young lives in the Greater Manchester areas. So today I'm going to hit you with a couple of facts, because today we're talking about youth mental health. So there's going to be a few strong facts coming up. So the Prince's Trust Youth Index, supported by L'Oréal Paris, has found that at the moment, sadly, among many concerning statistics, the overall well-being of 16 to 25-year-olds had fallen to its lowest point on the index in 11 years of the study. So the findings have shown that over half of young people report always or often feeling anxious. The report has also demonstrated that many young people are lacking in confidence. Over a quarter of young people reported feeling like they are going to fail in life, with a third of young people saying that they feel powerless to change their future. In addition to that, our Aspiration Gap Report, which was done in September 2020, has found that young people feel that 38% of young people feel that they will never succeed in life, and this increases to almost half at 48% of those surveyed from poorer homes. So the last stat that I'm going to hit you with is that over a third, so 36% of young people surveyed said they had lost hope for the future. So that's me setting the scene, all the doom and gloom and the reality of the statistics of what is really going on right now with young people and their mental health. So today we're going to talk about what are the solutions and how we can all come together to really make the workplace a better place for young people. So throughout the talk, please feel free to pop your Q&A on the right-hand corner. Our team will pick that up and we'll try and help answer as much of them as possible in the last 15 minutes. So now over to the main reason that we're all here is to listen to our amazing panelists. So I'd like to hand it over to the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you want to say a little bit about their name, where they work, the company, and why it's so important today for you to be here. So Jed, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Hi everybody, my name is Jed Flynn. I'm Chief Executive at Papyrus Prevention of Young Suicide. If you've not heard of us before, we'll change that in the next hour. I'm excited about today because I think some of the things I'm going to be talking about ostensibly are about young people, but actually they're about all of us as human beings. So I'm really excited about this.
Thank you, Jed. And Susie, over to you.
Thanks, Dagmar. Hi, everybody. I'm Susie King. I work for Marks & Spencer. I am a talent specialist within the HR team, and I am very passionate about mental health personally, and I've made that part of my job within M&S. It's kind of a side role, but I just wanted to go back to what Jed's just said. I think it is really important that we talk about everybody's mental health, because we do all have mental health. But it's really exciting to be here to talk to you guys, and love what the Prince's Trust is doing.
Thanks, Susie. And Emma, if you'd like to introduce yourself too.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a Prince's Trust Young Ambassador. I went on their enterprise programme a few years ago, similar to Dagmar, and set up an art therapy-based craft business. I've since gone on to do coaching and consultancy in the mental health sector. So this really means a lot to me to be able to be here and share with you all. So thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, to my amazing colleague, Felicia, if you'd like to introduce yourself too, please.
Thank you, Dagmar. Hi, everyone. My name is Felicia, and I started as a young person with the Prince's Trust last year. And over time, I've volunteered with the Trust as well. And currently, I work as an innovation coordinator with the Trust, with the innovation team. I'm here today to just share a little bit about, what I've gone through as well as mental health, and hopefully it helps one or two young people out there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for those great introductions. So, Jed, we're going to start the panel discussion. So, as the Chief Executive of a leading youth charity, can you tell us how lockdown is affecting young people's mental health and well-being?
I will. I'll start as I mean to go on. I'm going to talk about me. Right now, it looks like I'm in a posh office with beautiful branding and everything's perfect. And the reality is, I've got dishes lined up to be washed. I've got a pile of washing in the background, but it's covered up. It's a beautiful metaphor for our mental health and well-being. We all do that. There's a big debate just now about wearing masks. Should we or shouldn't we? You think about the metaphorical masks we choose to put on, or the metaphorical masks we're forced to put on. That's an even bigger debate. I think some of the reality is this. I'm privileged to be part of a charity, Papyrus, which was founded by parents who'd lost a child to suicide, very often out of the blue. And that child may have been 10 years of age or 20 or 30. So our services are geared to the sort of 10 to 35 age range. And one of the services we provide is called Hopeline UK, which is a professionally staffed suicide specific advice and information service. You can contact us every day of the year from 9 in the morning to midnight, and we'll give you advice, information and intervention around suicide if you're a young person, or if you're somebody, a parent, a carer, a doctor, a friend who's worried about that person. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from that experience of our colleagues listening to those young people every day through text, email and phone, day and night, every day of the year. So some of the things that have come through in the last 6 months have been the same as every day throughout, regardless of whether we're in lockdown or not. But some of those things have been accentuated by lockdown. So just off the top of my head, as it were, young people report being isolated, being uncertain, being unsure, being poor, being hungry, being confused, not having services, or services having been removed from them in the last few weeks and months because of the whole new world that we inhabit. A very interesting one for me is no privacy to contact a helpline like ours. So people are moving from phone to text because mum might listen or my partner may hear. And that's a crucial one about how we provide services. So we're learning all the time. I think the other phrase that came to my mind when I was reflecting on the themes that come through is there's no reprieve. And that's something that I think all of us experience when we're struggling with something acute, like whether to live or to die, whether to pay the bills or not, whether to go for that new job, or whether to put my hand in for that promotion, or whatever it is. There's no reprieve from the rumination that goes around in our minds. And it's easy for somebody who's a helper like me to default to being Mr. Fix-It, to say, I can fix that, I can help you. And it's banal at the other end of that spectrum just to say, I'll hear you, that must be difficult for you. So I think what Papyrus does is somewhere between those hearing and listening, but actually intervening to make a difference. I think we need to balance that sort of negative isolation, being alone, there's no privacy, with what we've learned about young people as well, and ourselves in the last 6 months. We, young and older, that's enough about me, are resilient. We can and do often bounce back, despite some of the most awful experiences and trauma. That we have a need to be supported and loved is a strength. That young people, and indeed society, is speaking about mental health more regularly and publicly is a strength and a wonderful opportunity. That celebrities are putting their name to mental health and mental illness and supporting those of us in that sector is brilliant. Here's the rub for me. Very few are talking about suicide. And even mentioning that word today, the reality is I'm sitting looking at a laptop and I can see 4 faces. But I imagine there are over 200 people possibly hearing that word. And maybe you didn't expect to hear the word suicide today. We've become quite used now to talk in public narrative about mental health, mental well-being, emotional health and well-being. But very few of us as employers have a suicide prevention policy. We're just catching up in most of our HR departments about making well-being a priority. I'm delighted Susie is on the panel showing us the brilliant beacon that Marks and Spencer is being about, you know, getting this onto their agenda more and more and building on the good work that's been done over the decades. And people in this audience, I'm sure, can attest to the efforts that they or their colleagues are making in this field. But my appeal is, don't forget, here's another statistic, Dagmar, that suicide is by far the leading cause of death in Britain for children and young people up to the age of 35. Let me repeat that. Suicide is the leading cause of death in children and young people. So whether you're a young person's ambassador, whether you're an administrator, whether you're the camera operator at the Prince's Trust, whether you've come here just because you wanted an hour away from your day job, or whether you've come here hoping for a nugget, here's a key message that we learn from young people. Listening is vital. Intervention is more important. It literally gives life. So each of us in our roles, professionally and personally, can do something to raise our game, to look after each other, but particularly around suicide prevention, I often say my job is to prevent suicide and to prevent misery. I'll come on to some sort of solutions, for want of a better word. But just to complete that list first, people are ringing us day and night from offices like yours, and you may have contacted us too, about things like, I'm struggling with my sexual identity. I've not told anybody, but I'm on drugs, but nobody knows. I'm on drugs and everybody knows, but I can't do anything about it. Please help me. I'm in dire financial circumstances. I am being abused. People don't like me. People are telling me they'd be better off if I was dead. People still don't get it that I have protected characteristics and pay lip service to them. People think they understand mental health because they've had depression. They've no idea what it's like to be a young person experiencing psychosis. Just some snippets of stories, anonymised, that I've heard of in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That's the painful reality of people who work for you and are sitting next to you. And some of you and us are in this room. Now that's a bleak picture, but I'll come back onto some of the more positive stuff towards the end of the conversation.
Thank you, Jed. Thank you for setting the scene. I loved what you were saying about listening is important, but intervention is vital. And I think that's a really good key takeaway for people to take away. So Susie, I know that you're the talent specialist within HR. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening on the front line at Marks and Spencer's, and what initiatives you've done over the last 2 years that have been successful?
Thanks, Dagmar. Jed, fantastic to hear from you. Really interested to hear more. I'll probably come up and pick up with you offline. So through COVID, I think, as you know, we are a retailer, and we were one of the retailers that stayed open throughout the COVID, the lockdown situation. And that's meant some really tough times for our people. We have been classed as frontline workers. All supermarket workers were classed as that, just as the NHS were. So we have had to go out to work to make sure that we're still feeding the nation. And that's meant we've had to do some very quick thinking within my team, the talent team, about what can we put in place to help our people. We really need to make sure that they're supported, not just physically, but also mentally, to go through this really scary time. So we jumped straight on it in April, and we started pulling together a site which we've got on our intranet within the company, all to do with COVID. And within that, we have a wellbeing toolkit. And predominantly in there, a lot of the information that we put there was around mental health. So Jed, you already touched on resilience. We made sure there was some resilience pieces in there. We already had stuff all over the business, but we tried to pull it together so it was really easy for people to find. And then we also looked at a wellbeing playlist for people as well. So all the things that we could think of that would just help people get through this time, short mindfulness sessions. You touched on abuse and being abused. We actually looked at what we would do if our people suddenly came to us and said, actually, in this lockdown situation, my home situation has gotten worse. So we did a piece around domestic abuse as well. We tried to cover as much of the spectrum of mental health as we possibly could. And we did that very quickly, but with quality as well. So that's one of the things that I think people have been using and dipping in and out of as they've needed to. And what's been interesting with us is we have furloughed people, and we've also had to then reach out to them and make sure that they've been okay, they've been off site, they haven't been part of the team, as such they haven't been working. So we've managed to keep people connected within the business, even though they've been at home not working for months. Then we've had people who have been at home working and are suddenly feeling isolated, especially if you live alone. I live alone. I went 4.5 months without touching another human being throughout COVID because I have multiple sclerosis, and that did all sorts to my mental health. But my work team just really kept me grounded, and it's sessions like this and talking to people like this that's really helped me get through. I think the other thing I wanted to touch on is then suddenly you've got family situations where you're through COVID and you're having to deal with the fact that you're working and there's all your family around you. You're having to homeschool children. What did that do to parents and the mental health of parents trying to keep their job going, and then also having children running in and out of meetings like this, how many people have you seen with a dog on the lap, or the partners walked through in just a towel? That's happened a couple of times, and we think it's funny, but it's not a great situation to have to think about that, whilst normally you'd just be sat safe in an office and not have to deal with any of that. So I think really that for us has kind of been the front line within M&S. In terms of campaigns we've done, we've moved on a lot in the last 2 years. I think, again, Jed mentioned about it's moved, health and wellbeing has moved up the agenda, and I've seen it physically happen within Marks and Spencer's, definitely within the last sort of 9 months. And it's there now at the top, and we talk about our people's health and wellbeing is the priority, and that mental health for me is the absolute core of that. But we've had quite a lot of things that we've done differently. We changed our employee assistance provider this time last year, and it was a game changer for me. Especially around the mental health piece. Suddenly we had access to trained counsellors, to psychologists, to CBT training. But that also encompassed things like bereavement, help if you'd had a bereavement, also financial support. That's another big thing that we worked out as a company, that if people's financial situation changes or people are struggling, then that then impacts on their mental health as well. So that really has helped a lot of people just to think, well, do we have that out there? Have we got those things to back us up? Some other things that we did a piece with Samaritans, again, this time last year, called Wellbeing in Retail. And that's a piece that is very much, the language in it is a toolkit, but it's the languages around being a retailer. So it's about working in stores, it's about working in distribution centres. So you can go into that and think, these people understand what I do. And obviously there is a lot of information from the Samaritans, and it does touch on suicide prevention, Jed, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased that Marks and Spencer's does talk about suicide, because I think, again, if we keep it hidden, it's dangerous. If we talk about it, then it does give people the safe space to actually be able to think about it and not hide it away. The other things we've looked at, we have done a piece on our intranet called we have a site on our intranet called My Choices, and there's a dedicated wellbeing piece within that, and it's physical, yoga, workouts like Joe Wicks types things, but there's also a massive mental health piece in there, and the link to our employee assistance provider is everywhere throughout there. So that again is helping to keep that front and centre with everybody. I bang on about our employee assurance provider and mental health in every situation I can. We're offering mindfulness sessions on a weekly basis. That's, again, one of my team has started doing that quite holistically. Slow uptake, but people are starting to use them more often. We built a wellbeing space in our support centre, which we'd never had before. I think previous to, again, about a year and a half ago, you had to go and sit in the first aid room or hope that nobody was in the prayer room. But now we have a dedicated space for people to just be able to go, meditate, do mindfulness. The best use of it that I've ever seen was a lady in there knitting. And I thought, you've got that. That's what's going to help your mental health. You've taken time away from your desk to go and knit. I just thought that was absolutely fantastic. And then we've done specific campaigns. We've used things from Mental Health Foundation. They did some fantastic posters about none of us are superhuman. If things are getting you down, please reach out, ask for help. They did the I'm fine one, where if people say, how are you? And everybody goes, I'm fine. And it was that ask twice. You know, are you really? And then people go, well, maybe we're not. We did Brew Monday, the idea of having a cup of tea and sitting down with people and talking about how you feel over, coffee. And then I think the thing that I'm most proud of, and I'll talk about it hopefully a bit later, which is we started an employee-led peer-to-peer support network. And we call it the Buddy Network. And this is for people with disabilities, underlying ill health, whether that's mental or physical. And we did something 2 years ago around Mental Health Awareness Week. We have a 6-foot inflatable elephant that we bought, and he sat in our foyer, and he was all about the elephant in the room, and we used that campaign. And we have a smaller version, and we took him round to the executive committee, and I got them all to write on a big piece of paper what they did to look after their mental health. They held it up, they had the small elephant under their arm, we took the photos, we put them all over the internet, and then we invited the rest of the business to send in their messages to tell us how they looked after their mental health. And we did it that way because I think the stigma was still quite high about coming forward and saying I'm suffering, but the idea was at least to get people talking about the fact that they have mental health and they need to do something to actually help themselves and look after themselves, and this self-care piece as well. So that was a massive campaign, and people still talk about it now, and the elephant does come out every so often, and I had the little one on the end of my desk when I was at work, and then I actually we didn't buy stress balls, we bought stress elephants. So we had those, and we gave those away to anybody who actually sent us a picture of themselves or told us how they looked after their mental health, and that went down really well. So I bought about 200 of those and spent a week posting them out to people.
Yeah, I love those little elephants. I really want one too. Yeah, I love the campaign of the elephant in the room, and it's interesting what you're saying about yeah, people have mental health. Somebody said to me the other day, like, if you have a brain, then you have mental health. So everybody does have it. So it's looking at how, you know, you can break down the barriers of the perception of it within the workplace, and those campaigns that you've just spoken about sound really great, Susie. Thank you. Emma, as a young person who's been supported by the Trust, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, but also can you tell us from a young person's perspective what you think managers and colleagues can do to spot early prevention of mental health conditions?
You can hear me. I started talking. Yeah, so 3 years ago, I left my job as an intensive care nurse following a severe mental health breakdown. And sadly, I had actually tried to take my own life. I received months of intensive psychiatric support. And I think it's interesting, actually, Jed, that you brought up about, you know, people thinking that they understand depression and anxiety. And I was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder, which are a challenging and interesting mix. But I have actually experienced episodes of psychosis, delirium, paranoia, and I think when people hear those words, there's a huge amount of stigma, you know, about people being psychotic and the negative connotations or the villainous connotations. But actually, when I do experience episodes like that, you know, in reality, it is very well managed. There's medication. I have a very good support team. I have an incredible family. And there's a lot of fear around it still, but actually, you know, I'm very open in saying I live with bipolar disorder and I do experience episodes of psychosis, but I am an incredibly functional, healthy, happy, ambitious person, you know, and it's just something that I live with. So during that period of time, so I didn't take sick leave. I just left my job because I was terrified of people seeing that I had a weakness. Especially, I think there's a lot more pressure when you are a care provider, that you don't want to be seen as the person that lets someone down. I was afraid that if I had a problem that people knew about, that they would stop coming to me for help, and then you know, the knock-on effect, oh, I'm letting them down and all of this. So I actually just handed my notice in, and you know, I would have been incredibly well supported in the NHS if I had gone off on sick. They have a great understanding for long-term absences due to mental health illnesses. Obviously, the pressures that come with the job. Some of the rates of depression are the highest in the NHS. Yeah, you know, a lot of us won't come forward with that or get treatment for that. So I was actually, after my breakdown, I was told that I wouldn't be able to work for 2 years, and that I wouldn't be able to do shift work any longer because of the impact that the sleep patterns would have on my mental health. And I just felt completely lost. I was unemployed, told that essentially the career that I'd trained towards, I wasn't able to do anymore. It's definitely a vocation. I think once you're a nurse, you're always a nurse. And yeah, just a huge challenge in identity, purpose, meaning. I had no idea what to do, and I certainly wasn't happy with the fact that I'd been told no, probably not for, you know, for another 24 months. And I thought, what? Total workaholic. And so I researched self-employment because I thought, you know, what are the barriers here? The barriers are the constraints of full-time employment at that time. And I know that a lot of businesses now are working towards being more flexible. So self-employment meant that I could work around my health needs. My conditions are chronic. I can't get rid of them. I just have to manage them on a daily basis and minimize risk, maximize quality of life. And so self-employment made sense for me, and I contacted the Prince's Trust because I had no idea how to start a business, and went on their enterprise program to launch an art therapy based craft business to support people with mental health through creative pursuits. I since then went on to launch a consultancy business, and then I'll work across the mental health sector in the UK, informing on care delivery, funding and integration of different services as well. And I'm still within that 2-year review can't work period, just to put things in a bit of perspective. So I think for a lot of people, it's important to know that there needs to be a flexibility there. I'm classed as a disabled person because of these, but it doesn't mean that I'm not able to work. I am very capable of working. It just means that perhaps I can't work consistently for a few months at a time sometimes, but the quality of my work and the impact that my work has is unscathed, by these challenges. In terms of signs and recognition, I think everyone can agree it is incredibly difficult to, to recognise someone who might be struggling with their mental ill health at times. Some people are very well versed in concealing it. I know that I was until, the 25-year mark where it all came crashing down. It could be hidden behind someone just saying, it's just a bad day, but actually that means it's been a terrible month. The person who's on their 5th cup of coffee by 11 a.m. buzzing around could be overcompensating for all the stress that's underlying, or the one who's always just quiet in the background might actually have crippling anxiety. So it is difficult, and especially when you are hiring new young people into a workplace, if you don't know their characteristics or their behaviour, it is difficult to recognise perhaps the changes that you might see. And also not to assume that someone's, got anxiety because they're quiet, and not to assume that someone has depression, and not to be intrusive in that way either. That's something I experience a lot with bipolar, is someone, they think if I'm happy, they're like, oh, you're manic. And I'm like, no, it's really not like that at all. So that, there needs to be a lot more education and communication. It is incredibly challenging. But also, as we're talking, I think through any mental health conversation, just to bear in mind that you can only support someone in the capacity and within the knowledge frame that you have, and you can't, you're not entirely responsibility for that person's outcomes. So you have to also manage your own emotional load. So we're here to try and support you to learn how to, approach these conversations and how to escalate care, but ultimately, please also be aware that you do not need to take that burden home with you, because that's another cycle. So I guess easier, more common signs that you can notice, and this is across young people, but also across the whole workforce, is tiredness, poor time management, lack of concentration, inability to complete tasks, reduced care for appearance. I know that when I became unwell, I just rocked up, I had scrubs on, no hair, makeup, nothing done, which is very unlike me, but because I did it so often, people didn't recognise it. Withdrawn behavior. And again, like I said, touching on, you don't always recognise these things in people until you get to know them. I think characteristically, someone who's in a full-time job, who has, successfully completed an interview, they're not going to be someone who naturally is rubbish at completing tasks or rubbish at time management because you've hired them. They're skilled and qualified. So you have to start thinking, why is that? Do they need more support? Do I need to deliver something in a different way for them? And I think the biggest thing for me is that in any circumstance, it's not to open up an interview. I think it's great that we've opened up the conversation over the last few years, especially, and saying, are you okay? But if you lead with a question, immediately someone can make that a closed question. So whereas if you lead with a conversation and say, actually, do you know what? I've been having a really difficult day today. How was yours? Or, I was feeling like I hadn't quite done enough and it made me feel a bit upset and I don't want to take that home with me. How did you get on today? Immediately normalizes that conversation. I always lead with my experience so that the conversation is normal and we're not coming into a conversation with me saying, what can I do for you? Which puts me on a hierarchical kind of playing field. It's actually saying, I'm struggling too. Can we help each other? And keeping it on that equal level. So yeah, so that's the biggest thing, is actually considering, am I opening an interview with this person or am I opening a conversation? And I think that's, that's the best way to try and get through to someone.
Amazing, thank you, Em. I think that's a great point about getting on the same level and not not having an open question. Felicia, my amazing colleague, could you tell us a little bit about how the effects of lockdown how it's affected your mental well-being?
Thank you, Dagmar. To be honest, it's been very tiring for me. So at the beginning of lockdown, I kind of found it very difficult because I'm someone who naturally I love being on the move. So it's either I take a bus, on a long journey to the mall, when I know I could actually take the train, but just so I could get, like an headspace, time to think and all of that. But yeah, lockdown was coming in and I had to stay at home, nowhere to go, nothing else to do. It started to wear on me. I didn't find it easy at all in the beginning, up until about last month. So I felt like I was having to share my space with people, my privacy. I couldn't do anything, without considering other people. And I didn't find that, like an easy task to do. I felt like I was losing my privacy. I had to let other people into my space as well. So over time, it started to wear on me. My thinking, I started to overthink things. And even what wasn't there, I started to think everything through, like double thinking of everything. And then my performance as well started to wear down. My performance at work, I wasn't doing, exceptionally well. And I just kind of was always sad almost every time because the things I really wanted to do, I couldn't do it. And being indoor where, like, once I'm indoor, I just prefer to be on my own, maybe read a book or just lie there on the bed and do something else. But I couldn't do that because obviously I had to be in the midst of my people, my family and stuff like that. So I just became sad. I was always sad all the time. My performance was dropping. I wasn't doing very well. I was always thinking and stuff like that. So it really took an adverse effect of me. And at a point as well, I started to have some family issues, which really affected me, a lot. And prior to the lockdown, I used to think I was a very strong person who could always, like, whatever comes my way, I thought I was ready to overcome it. But I think the lockdown really taught me that I really wasn't as strong as I thought. So yeah, I think that's the effect it's had on me so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Felicia, you are definitely a very strong person and amazing colleague. I'm lucky to have you in my team. Jed, over to you. So we've kind of set the scene. We've gone through what people are feeling. Like I myself, the second lockdown has been difficult for me. So we're all going through it. And I think you and I have had some really good conversations about how we can support each other. So Jed, what is the value of self and mutual care in the workplace? And how do you think companies can proactively support mental health of their staff?
Anything I'm about to say does not come from a place of we've got it all correct and right. We do everything well at Papyrus. We don't. We're learning. I was so pleased, Felicia, that you just said one thing I've learned is that I'm not as strong as I thought. So let me give you a tip that one of my colleagues reminded me of this week. This is to everybody. It's 4 words we can ask ourselves. What am I pleased about? What have I tried? What have I learned? And what am I concerned about? Let me give you those again. PTLC. What am I pleased about? What have I tried? What am I learning? And what am I concerned about? And then there's the 5th. So what are you going to do about it? What do you need to do next? It's just a lovely gift that somebody gave me this week and I'm passing it on. I could give you a lecture on all the things we need to do better at Papyrus. Our policies and procedures have just gone through a new complete rehaul and we're still in that process. We've revisited employee assistance. We're having a big debate about the place of clinical supervision. How do we meet the emotional and mental health needs of our team? But I want to share with you a concept. In most European languages, unlike English, the word you has 2 forms. One is a collective. So if I'm talking to a group, a team, I talk about the plural you. And in English, we only have one word, which is you. In French, we say vous and tu. And my message is, don't forget that tu is important. When you're looking at what do you need as a staff team, you as an employee, you as a person, you as a human being, have needs that need to be met, and you have a right for those needs to be heard, expressed, and to some extent met. We can't have all our needs met. That would be utopia. But we learn by trying to navigate how to have our needs met. So some of the ways we've tried to do that over lockdown is to increase the volume of interactions between teams. Senior management team breaking its doors open and bringing people in, and you know, letting people realize that management team meetings are really boring as well. You know, that we're all human behind the masks and behind the roles we have. You know, back to me, I'm talking to you now, Mr. Chief Exec, and I'm fighting with 2 little dogs in my living room for ear space. You know, that's our reality. So my gift, if I may, is not to talk to you about improve your benefits and improve your salaries and improve your clinical supervision models, and those things are vital. But at the heart of it is our need to reflect on, what do I need? What does my team need? And think of those 4 words. What are we pleased about? We've achieved a lot in lockdown, all of us. We're still here. What have we tried and it's not worked? What have we tried and we can do better? So, for example, we've realised that flexible working is much more doable than we ever imagined. And that's a challenge as well as an opportunity. What are we concerned about? As well as in our case, we're worried about young people and suicide, but internally, I'm concerned that people still feel that they're not valued and that they're not being heard. And in a way, I think lockdown's been a gift to us. It's really made us regroup, reteam. And I hate that phrase, there's no me in team, there's no I in team. Yes, there is. There's a you, and you matter. So my last shout, before the end of the day, take a piece of paper out and write down 4 words. What are you pleased about? What have you tried? What have you learned? What are you concerned about? But finally, what do you need to do next to make that better for you and for others?
Thank you, Jed. I just saw all of us on the camera scribbling it down on a piece of paper whilst you were saying, so I definitely think we can all implement that. We've got quite a few more questions to go through and a bit cautious of time, but Susie, I'd like to put a question to you next. So as the co-founder of the employee-led wellbeing network at Marks and Spencer's, what do you think the importance of a network is within a big brand like M&S or any big brand or company?
I think they're vital, and the reason I think they're vital is because they are coming from a space of lived experience. So whether it's LGBTQ+ or it's a gender or BAME, I know that word is being thought about differently now, or it is disability, whatever the 9 protected characteristics it covers, it's really important that you can connect and support each other. And again, this goes back to what Jed has just said, it's having that team around you, and we've got a very small group within the Buddy Network. We've been going for 5 years. I think our real reason for being is just to connect people from one end of the UK to the other end of the UK who have similar conditions, who are living in similar circumstances, and for them to give that honest, authentic support to each other. That's why we started in the first place, with 2 of us having a coffee, supporting each other, and we just said, how can we scale this up for the rest of the company? That's the reason. We do lots of other things with it. We consult with the business when we think things are being missed or things need to be done better in that space, but it's all about having people support each other.
Amazing. Support the people around you. So Susie, how are companies how is M&S recruiting young people at these current times? What initiatives are you doing to try and recruit and help young people?
So I think the pandemic has just magnified the barriers facing young people getting into work. We have to think about the social distancing guidelines now. We have an employability program called Marks and Starts, and we've completely redone it in the last few months. And the lady who's done it is on the call. Shout out to Leanne. We couldn't do face-to-face classroom style workshops anymore as we could previously. Store placement was going to look really differently. So in partnership with the Prince's Trust, we've worked with the Prince's Trust on this for years. So we've developed a blended digital program that enables young people to get the skills that they need and the behaviours within the workplace, and still go in and have in-store workplace experience as well. So we relaunched it this week, and we've welcomed 380 young people onto the placement across 129 stores within the country. We are so pleased and proud of this, and it's really important that we provide these opportunities for young people, especially the way the working landscape is changing due to COVID. And it's paramount that the young people have these opportunities so they can build their confidence, their resilience, and it helps with their mental health as well and their well-being.
Sorry, thank you. I believe that one of our moderators will pop in the marks and starts post that's on the Prince's Trust website. So if any of you companies out there want to have a look at that and want to partner with the Prince's Trust, please reach out to us and follow suit to M&S. So Emma, how do you think that we can understand and support young people with their mental health conditions within the workplace?
I think again it comes back to this equality of conversation and letting people come to you and tell you as well. If in the ideal world, when you get employed into a new job or a new role, you would be able to, disclose to HR or occupational health that these are the conditions that I have underlying and all this kind of stuff. But in reality, it doesn't happen like that most often than not. So again, it's just having, approaching it in the right way. And it's not necessarily saying, do you have a diagnosis of? It can be something like, what ways do you work best at home? What kind of learning styles do you use? What kind of materials do you use? How do you best complete tasks? And all of these things can really minimize stress in the workplace without actually saying, we can see that you're overwhelmed, do you need help? It's actually just maximizing productivity in the same way that you would with any other employee. So there's a lot of different ways, that you can go about that. But I think it's not, how can we understand people in mental health? It's how can we all understand and appreciate each other? I think there's a lot of issues that still are happening around, autonomy and micromanagement as well, for sure. But just understanding and appreciating that, this young person that's coming into your workforce, they have a skill set that, that no one else in your workforce necessarily has. They have talents, they have values, they have ideas, and they're just as important as everyone else's, especially in a time like this. Some of the creative strategy in businesses that I've worked with recently have come from some of, the less senior staff who have actually just got the innovation and the idea, and we think, well, actually, we've got nothing to lose at the minute, let's try it. And having that value, purpose and value for me is definitely the most important thing in the workplace. And if you're living with that meaning, even if you can't control for that person what goes on in their home life, but they're coming in and living a meaningful and purposeful life in the workplace, you're making 37.5 hours of their week better. And that in its own right impacts mental well-being massively. But I just want to quickly, before I finish, is pick up on what Susie mentioned earlier about supporting people with finances. And this is something I feel really strongly about as well, because I know it's characteristic of bipolar, certainly with a lot of people with mental ill health, is that I have really poor financial management when I'm unwell, and that really adds to to bouts of depression. And for an example, I spent tens of thousands of pounds, on something that I wouldn't normally buy when I was manic, and then spent a year recovering from that financial difficulty. And I think if we water that down and just think into you're the ones who are now providing this young person with money. They probably won't have been taught how to manage that at school because it's still not on the curriculum. And all of a sudden then they've got this money, they have all these bills to pay, they're having to think about a pension, the taxes, and they don't actually understand anything. I do think there is some form of responsibility there that would support people from HR to say, this is how to manage, a monthly budget. This is how to make it last throughout the month, instead of people having this, peak of emotional spending and then trough of, I've got no money. And I think now more than ever, finance is having, a huge impact on people's mental health. I work with Martin Lewis's charity Money and Mental Health, and they've got, lots of interesting reports about that I'm happy to share. But I do think there is a duty of care there with, financial support as well that we can help young people learn about in the workplace.
Thanks, Emma. So we are just going to wrap up the panel discussion and then go on to some Q&A that we've received. So I'd like everyone, so each of the panelists, to please say one key measurable action that you would like the audience to take away from today. So Susie, if you'd like to go first, that'd be amazing.
I'm not sure it's measurable. I think basically you need to go and look at what you're offering right now for the mental health of your people. So go and look at everything you have within your company and try and get it in one place. I think, like we've done with the COVID site, get it all together, because being able to signpost as a line manager to say this is what we have to support you is really powerful to say to your people. But if you don't know where it is and you say, well, it's somewhere, it doesn't help them. So try and get the signposting down pat, so you can say to them, this is what we have right now to help you. And you can go even further than that and think, if you look at the mental health charities as well, if you've got those in the back pocket as well. So just make sure you know where the support is for your people.
Thanks. Jed, would you like to go next?
Yeah, again, just to repeat what I said earlier, this is not a sermon from somebody who practices what he preaches all the time. It's an aspiration. Here's my phrase: if you want the best from your people, be the best for your people. And if I may, Dagmar, I've got 3 takeaways.
Go for it. Go for it.
Write these down, everybody. Be human. Number 2, be human. And number 3, be human. End of sermon.
Thank you, Jed. Thank you for that. And Emma?
Yeah, I guess it's everything I've said over and over today, but I can't stress it enough, is to open up a conversation, not an interview, and always look after yourself first as well. Be prepared for the answers that you might get, and know how to escalate if you need to.
Thank you. And Felicia?
Just like Jed has said, be human to your employee. Let them know what they have access to, how they can benefit from the company. And he also said something about, you give back what you take. If you're nice to your people, they would also be nice to you. So I think it's all about just being human. I mean, the bio on my LinkedIn actually says human, because with everything that has gone on, this year, I think we all just have to be human, as humanly as we can be, with everything. So yeah, just be human. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. So if anybody's got any Q&A, if you'd like to pop it on the right hand corner, I know we've had some coming through already. So Felicia, I'm going to start off with you. Somebody has asked, how do you think that managers and companies can help young people in work at these current times?
First of all, I think it's very important to know that they are young people, and obviously they will just be starting out in their career, and they may or may not know the kind of things they have access to. So I think first off, employers should let these new employees know the kind of employee assistance program they are entitled to. It's always written in the benefits of the job that well-being, but what kind of package does the well-being come with? Is it gym, whatever it may be, but I think particularly we should be concerned about the employee assistance. How can we assist them mentally? A lot of people will be going through mental health, but they can't speak up, they can't tell people what they are going through. So maybe at induction, at onboarding, let them know firsthand how can they access these facilities. How can they access it? They don't need to come through you, because they may feel that coming through you makes them vulnerable, like they have this issue. But maybe if you can just connect them directly, tell them how to access the employee assistance program, they can just go there whenever they feel like. And secondly, one of the points I think I have is when your employee's performance begins to drop, I think you should know that something is wrong with them. So I'm going to use myself as an instance. So when my performance began to drop between I think June and July, I had my manager reach out to me, and for me that was human. And I kind of explained to her that, yeah, I'm going through a lot and stuff. And although she wanted me to take time off, but I knew that taking time off at that point was only going to make me worse off. So I kind of told her that let me keep working, let me keep doing the best I can do at this time. And whenever I feel, more comfortable with taking a time off, I'm going to do that. So I think it's always nice to, whenever I just see that their performance is dropping, just try to reach out, tell them what's going on and what problems are you facing, how can we help, just be there for them. And my third point would be that, try and have some group activities, just like Susie said earlier that they do at M&S. Try and have activities where everyone can connect. Everyone is digital right now. So, the human connection, the physical connection is not there. So everyone would need something to do online. So you can just come up with different activities. In my team, every Thursday afternoon, we meet and we just have fun. We call it our social corner. So I think it's something that a different organization can do. So those are my points. Thank you.
Felicia she brings the fun on a Thursday, I'm not going to lie. She definitely brings the vibes to our team. Thank you, Felicia, for those great points. Jed, what tools and techniques this person is asking can they use in their company to not only include mentally challenged young people, but also to empower them so that companies can really tap into the potential that they have?
I'm tempted to say we have to be careful not to separate people by a particular attribute. We all are gifted and talented and struggle. We've all got joys and sorrows. So I wouldn't like to think that I would be segregated because I wear glasses or because I have a disability or because my hair's falling out, whatever. So you've got to be careful of that. But I do think sensitively we can acknowledge diversity among us in very new and creative ways. I'm sure we've all experienced new learning because we've heard not from experts but from other humans this morning. All of us sharing our, if I dare to say, shit. All of us sharing our dirty washing as much as our joys and tips and tricks. And I think we just need to get better at connecting. And I keep saying we've not got this right at Papyrus. We need to get better at it. There's probably colleagues I've not spoken to for 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm very conscious that. That's one of my takeaways from today. Reconnect all the time. I've got a little tip, and I'll share it. If it's useful, use it, and if not, just ignore me. If somebody crosses your mind, pick the phone up and give them a call. It's a little simple thing that you can include people, regardless of what their abilities or disabilities are. So I'm pretty much resisting the temptation to say, let's hear from people who've got a mental illness. I think that's important, but just as it is from people who haven't as well. So I think my tip and trick really is to reconnect with people who you haven't had a conversation with for a while. And that is probably what Felicia just said. Your manager phoning you to say, I've noticed you might be struggling. How are you? Just simple human things can change lives and can save lives.
Thank you for that, Jed. We've had one more question come in, which Susie, I think would be great for you, a new one. Somebody said, I suffer from depression, anxiety and stress. How do you keep a professional mindset when looking for work? And is it okay to tell HR or a potential employer that about your mental health?
It is absolutely okay to do that. It is your choice to do that. I have multiple sclerosis, but I actually, I was diagnosed whilst I was in work. But the minute I felt comfortable, I told everybody, and I tell everybody. It's literally part of who I am within the business, because it's important for me to be able to be myself at work. And I can't do that if people don't know what I'm dealing with, that I have this chronic illness. And then I can then go on to have further conversations about what reasonable adjustments I need. That's important. So if you're going into a new role, your company may ask you about reasonable adjustments, they may not, and you don't have to legally say anything. It's completely up to you. But I've found that my working life is so much easier when people know what I'm dealing with. And that comes back to the mental health piece through COVID as well. If people have said, how are you doing? And I'm having a bad day, I have told them I'm having a bad day. And that is absolutely fine to do that as well. And Felicia, I think what you've said has been very, very powerful about, you were lucky that your line manager reached out to you, but obviously they noticed there was something going on. when somebody's new into the business and you haven't given them almost like a heads up that this might be there, then they probably won't know you well enough to be able to pick that up. So if you've actually said, you know, it's not all the time, and as Emma says, you know, she's deals with her chronic illness all the time, and she deals with it, she lives with it, and some days are better than other. That's the same for me. But then if you've actually given people the opportunity to know about it, and they can go and educate themselves as well, then you're giving them the opportunity to give you the best working life that they can supply. So it's also, you're giving them the gift to make your working life better. So yes, from a personal point of view, I would absolutely advocate saying it, but it's not, I happen to be quite a confident person about this. I know not everybody else is. So you've got to work out what it means for you and what you're comfortable with doing.
Amazing, thank you so much, Susie. I really want to ask more questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time because, yeah, I'm loving all of the advice and experience that everyone's gone through. So I just want to, yeah, tell everyone all of the positive feedback that we're getting on the chat. Everyone's saying they've had loads of great takeaways, lots of big ups for Emma and Felicia, and that people have taken away a lot from today's talk. So thank you to our amazing panelists and for all of our audience for joining us on today. So I just want to remind you that if you do have any opportunities or jobs for young people, then please, please, please do reach out to the Get Hired and the Prince's Trust team so that we can try and support as many young people at this current time. We will send a recording of this webinar to everybody who's registered. Thank you again to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority for supporting us, and look out for the next Prince's Trust Talks, which is all about gender equality and female empowerment in the workplace, which I'm really excited for. So thank you everybody, and have a brilliant day, and please do support each other at this time and reach out to us at the Prince's Trust. Thank you.